this is Mike from Mike Jones Knife and Tool, and today I'm going to show you how I rough grind the bevel on a knife. So last time I did the sheath video, I did the short version and the really long drawn out version. That got a pretty good response, so I'm going to try to do that again with this, even though the quick version of a rough grind is going to be really quick. Maybe the long version will be a little more interesting for you. So let's get right into it. I got a fresh 36 grit belt on my grinder. I love that new belt smell, so let's get into it. Right, so this is going to be the slightly longer version, more explanation, a little more drawn out, so buckle up. Now the first thing that I do when I'm going to rough grind a bevel on a knife is I like to mark the edge, the center line of the edge. This is pre-heat treat, so you want your bevel to be, even though this is just a rough grind, you want it to be as symmetrical as possible, because that's going to help you when you're heat treating, so you don't get any warpage. If you got a lot more material on one side than the other, or if your bevel is a little off center, your knife's going to have a tendency to bend one way or the other when it's getting heated up super hot and then quenched really quick. So you want to be as center as possible, and then that helps you grind your final grind later on after your heat treat too. So what I've got here is some layout dye. It's blue. You can get all kinds of different versions of this, but this one's nice because it comes with a little dauber in there. And the dauber's always got way too much dye on it, so I try to get some of that off. And I do, if I'm grinding a whole bunch of knives, particularly if I'm sending them away for heat treat, like the stainless ones, because I have to send those away, do a whole bunch of them all at once because you always have too much dye on this thing. So this is real simple. You just quickly wipe the edge like that. Get it all over, nice and even, and then give that a moment to dry. So here's a quick tip. If you're going to do a whole bunch, you can stack them up, alternating the dye edge back and forth, so you don't get blue dye all over your knives. So the thickness of my steel is 0.112. You can either know that because that's what you ordered, or you can measure it if you got a set of calipers like this. Half of 0.112 is 0.056, which is what you then set your calipers to. And then you could scribe both sides from both faces, and that'll give you an idea of if you're close or not. So you take this guy, your caliper set to half of your thickness, rest it on the edge of your knife, give it one of those. Then you go down the other side. How we do? Pretty bang on. Having calipers is really nice to do this. They scratch really fine, and if you don't have a set of those, I'd recommend getting some. It's just handy to have around the shop. Digital is nice and easy too, because it just shows you right on the screen exactly what your measurement is. And but it's kind of nice to be able to do it manually. It's just one of those things. Now another way to do it is with a drill bit. If you've got the drill bit that's the exact same thickness, or even if you've got one that's close, you can use that, because the idea is if you lay this flat down, you lay your drill bit down, you can scratch. The tip of your drill bit should be the center of your steel, but even if it's a little bit off, if you scratch it one way, flip it over, scratch it the other way, it'll give you a variance, which will leave you a little space between your two lines. You can use that because we're going to be grinding this not quite sharp. You want to leave a little bit of steel along your edge in the end for heat treating. So having two lines can be kind of handy. I should also mention that in lieu of blue layout dye, you can also use a good heavy permanent marker. If you're going to do that though, I would suggest that your grind lines along your edge be perpendicular to the edge itself, cross grain, as opposed to with it. I find that you get much better relief with you scratch on if you're just using Sharpie for that. Then it's time to get to grinding. Quick word on setting up your grinder. Make sure you've got yourself in a pretty comfortable position here. You don't want to be grinding way up here. You also don't want to be far down here. You want to be somewhere close where you can get a good angle at what you're looking at. Get some light over your head because you want to be able to see right here. Also, I've got a bucket of, well, it's usually water, but a bucket of slush underneath here because you're going to be firing a ton of sparks straight down. You don't want to be burning holes in your shoes, which I've done. So nice and comfortable, lots of light. Wear all your protective gear. This is a TDM. It's one of their basic grinders. I was going to do a review on this grinder, but they stopped making it, so that seems like kind of a waste of time. So here's how I like to start grinding the bevel of my knife. I know a lot of other guys do it this way too, so I must be doing something right. So if we've got, say this is a side profile, an end profile, sorry, a cut off of the knife, looking at it like you're looking straight at the tip of it. Eventually you want to end up with like a nice bevel like this. But you don't start grinding on that bevel and take out material like that. That's not how I like to do it. Instead, I like to take off as close to the center line as I'm going to end up being, and take off this much. A sharp angle like that, because this is really easy to take off. You're removing a small amount of material, so you can do it in very few passes, and then you get right to your center line. And then I'll start just slowly easing my knife flatter and flatter and flatter. So you take off that, and then you take off that. So the farther you go, you're only taking off this small amount, and then you're only taking off this small amount. So it's very easy. And the farther down you get, all of a sudden, this surface is the most prominent surface of the edge of the blade. So you have a larger area here than you have left, and that becomes very easy to index against your belt. When you go to stick your blade back on and make that grind again, it becomes very easy to find that surface because it's the largest area. It's nice and flat. Boom, there it is, and you move across. So you just take off little bit, instead of trying to take make that perfect bevel all in one. Just slowly, gradually get there, and you're putting less and less pressure here because you don't want to move that too far over. You want to be moving this direction, so you're putting your pressure right down here when you're pressing on the knife against the belt. You want the pressure to be down here, not up on the edge. And so then you slowly get flat, keep checking it, and eventually you'll end up with something nice and consistent that you're happy with. Okay, so it's finally time to get to the grinder and start making sparks. Now this is a brand new 36 grit belt, like I mentioned. It's going to take a lot of material off in a hurry, and that's intimidating. If you're just starting out, there's no shame in putting on like a 60 or even a 120 grit belt and going really slow. Grinding the bevel, a perfect bevel on a knife, is the most challenging aspect of the whole knife making process. Some guys are really good at it. Lots of guys are not. I'm not that great at it. I'm definitely still learning, especially changing from a horizontal belt to the vertical belt. It's a whole new ball of wax. So definitely go slow. Try not to get discouraged. The first few knives that you grind are probably going to be terrible. Mine definitely were, and they're still not perfect by any means every time. So go really slow. Expect to make mistakes. It's going to happen. No big deal. Everybody makes mistakes when they do this. So just go nice and slow. And then grind by hand. You know, hold the thing, get a feel for the grinder, get a feel for bevels. There's tons of jigs out there that you can buy, or it's really easy to make one, and you just have a flat work rest here, and the thing does it for you. And a child could do that. You just push the knife into the belt, boom, 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 over and over and over again. By doing that, by taking a handmade aspect out of the process, the more you automate this, you know, then it's a slippery slope to getting your blanks water jetted or buying pre-made micarta and, you know, mechanical fasteners and outsourcing your sheaths. And eventually you end up becoming a knife assembler as opposed to a handmade knife maker. So, you know, it's one of those things, just like being able to read the calipers manually as opposed to using digital ones. It's just a little skill that's nice to have. This one especially is a huge one, because being able to do it by hand, you'd be able to transfer that into doing all sorts of fun stuff with your bevels. So I'd suggest learning how to do it by hand. Okay, like always, suit up. I am wearing earplugs, so don't give me shit about that. And go at it. All right. So like I said, I started up short, and ground straight to my line. I don't know if you could tell, but there's barely still a line there, because I want to leave a little bit before I send it away for heat treating, like I said, and then just slowly work that line, that bevel line, down, down, down. Now, because this is fairly thin, it's like less than an eighth thick, so I actually don't want to grind too much more than this. I get really nervous when I start getting way up high and it starts getting really, really thin, because then when you send that away to heat treating, the thinner the blade it is, especially once you get into really long ones. This is only about 6 inches, but you get up into 8 or 10 inches, the longer it is and the thinner it is, the more susceptible you are to getting warp. So the final product, once it comes back from heat treating, it's going to be easy to move that bevel line up the edge there, especially because we're already close to finished there. So that's as far as I'm going to go on that one, and then I'll do the other side, and this one will be ready to go. I leave it rough because there's no point in making this thing polished when it's just going to go straight away to heat treat, and then you're going to grind it later. So super rough edge like that with a 36 is fine. When it comes back, I start on a 60 to do the finish grinding. I think I already uploaded a video for finish grinding, so you'll be able to jump over there and check that one out, see what they look like when they come back from heat treating. But as far as rough grinding, there it is. So take your time, go slow. It's a very slow, mellow learning curve, so don't be intimidated by it. We're all still learning, and good luck. Thanks for watching. Hey, so as I was grinding, I thought of some other stuff I should probably say. Number one, this is stainless. That's why you're not seeing tons of sparks. It doesn't really spark up all that much, this AEBL razor blade stainless. If you're using high carbon, it'll throw a ton of sparks for sure. Another thing is that when you're grinding, if you do end up getting way too close to your edge, it's nothing to just give it a quick buzz. You'll see your edge come right back. Sometimes I have to do that if it's getting too difficult to get the thing just symmetrical. Get too close to the edge and just give it a quick buzz, and that'll give you like a mil or something. You want to leave like a millimeter of steel along the edge there before it gets to sharp for sending it away to heat treat, particularly at the tip. If you leave a little extra meat on the tip, it's not going to hurt anything. It just gives you a little bit more just in case. What else? It doesn't have to be a perfectly flat bevel. This one, I don't know if I'll be able to show it, but the bevel's got right up in here. Went a little bit funky. Again, this is going to get ground more when it comes back from heat treating, so I don't stress that too much. I'm not going to spend 20 minutes, half an hour per knife trying to get your bevel just dialed in when it's just going to go and get heat treated and come back and get completely ground away anyway. So don't stress the little stuff. What else? Oh, how much pressure to put on it. I'm not pushing hard, especially because this is a brand new belt. Even with worn out belts or higher grip belts, you don't have to push super hard, but you can adjust with the amount of pressure very minutely how much grind you're taking off. So if you're coming across and you're finding that you're taking off too much at the start of the grind and then your bevel starts to wane out at the end there, you can start nice and light and then slowly add a little more pressure. It's just one of those things to play with and kind of get the feel for, which is another great reason to grind by hand. And then when you're working, I always start in by the handle and work out to the tip, and then I flip it around, start in by the handle again and work out to the tip. You're going to find that one way you grind more consistently one way than others. I grind easier this way, and then when I flip it around, this side, grinding this side of the bevel with my left hand being the leader. And that takes me a lot more practice. The way I hold it, I have my thumb up here somewhere on the edge, and then supporting just a little bit along the spine with my finger, and my other thumb controls the pressure at the tip. This thumb controls the angle of the bevel, so the more you push, the more angle you get, and then your fingers are just kind of there just to support that. And then this way also, when you're doing your finish grinding, at least you'll feel the heat coming down the edge with your thumbs. It's a good time to have water by, dunk it and cool it off in the water. But that's kind of my grip, and that's how I control the bevel as best I can. This thumb works the edge. This edge, this finger holds it so it's not getting all tippy like this, because that'll change your grind. Nice and slow and easy. Play with it and get better. There's another thing that you could do. This edge obviously runs all the way into the heel. There's no stop, so there's no plunge point. Sometimes you'll have a knife, maybe like this one, where you want your grind to start somewhere in at the edge. You obviously don't want to run into the handle, so you want to have a plunge point there and run across. It's another reason for starting at a really sharp angle like that, is because you immediately get a nice deep plunge, and then you can start there again, or even start up a little bit really lightly and move into that plunge line, and you'll feel it. You'll feel the belt hit right where your plunge is. Boom, there you are. Start grinding. There's a lot of things that you can buy or make that clamp over your knife like this, and that kind of starts your grind right away. It's like a gauge, I guess, and so you can bump your belt right up against that. That's supposed to make it exactly even on both sides. I haven't built one yet. I might, but it's another thing that's nice to be able to do by hand, is just kind of feather it and get it just perfect on either side and just work it. And that's another thing, you can wait until your finished grind, or even until your knife's almost done. I know guys who don't worry at all about what the start of their grind looks like here, because you can always come back later on with a really high grit where you're not taking tons of material off, and just kind of work that and get it just right at the end of your grinding. So don't stress that kind of stuff. Just work on getting your bevel right. Have some fun with it. Thanks for watching. Happy grinding.